Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sela Social Studies. All right, so if you're watching my videos in succession, you remember I left you off at the Revolutionary War and the American victory over the British, but we're going to go ahead and rewind just a little bit into some things that were happening during the war that has such a great effect after the war. So during the Revolutionary War, the Continental Congress met and decided that since the United States had declared its independence over Britain, it would need to form a new government that would take effect after a potential American victory. So between 1876 and 1877, the delegates drafted the Articles of Confederation. Now, these articles were fiercely debated and were finally approved by Congress on November 15, 1777. After the Continental Army defeated the Royal Military Force at the Battle of Yorktown in October of 1781 and effectively rid the United States of British rule, the delegates knew that it was time to establish the government for the young nation, the one that's been sitting on the shelf for nearly 4 years. So the Articles of Confederation would serve as a bridge between the government of the Continental Congress and the federal government that's established under the Constitution in 1789. The Articles of Confederation were finally ratified, or what we say approved, on March 1st, 1781, and became the first form of government, and more importantly, the first form of central government for the United States of America. Now, the Articles describe the United States running more as a league of friendship rather than one whole solid nation. You see, the states were still practicing most of the rights that they were practicing before their independence. So the Articles of Confederation was given power to such things as foreign affairs, the postal service, and it gave the government the right to declare war and appoint military officers. It also gave the government the authority to issue bills of credit, determine the value of money, and even borrow money from the states. The important word there is borrow. So the Articles paved the way for the United States to experience self-governing powers under one written document and set the stage for the more successful Constitution in 1789. So during the times of the Articles of Confederation, there was a push westward in westward expansion, and state claims were to the west were settled. A monumental accomplishment of the Articles of Confederation was the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. The Northwest Ordinance was established to set out a series of laws and stipulations that would set up new governments in the new territories and states in the Ohio River Valley. Now that we've discussed some of the positives of the Articles of Confederation, which seems like a lot but is not much, borrowing money, controlling some foreign affairs, value money, it's time to talk about the reality of what the Articles were. They were a failure. The newly formed government under the Articles was very weak. The Articles gave the government no real power to control or enforce the requests to the states. Remember I said borrow that request? When the government was tasked to pay off the debt from the Revolutionary War, it would request to borrow money from the states. Hey, Virginia, can I borrow some money to help pay off my debts? Virginia's going to be like, no. So when the states declined, there was nothing the government can do. That was major failure number one, is that it could not raise revenue by taxing the states. Makes sense, right? Because they were just part of a monarchy. They fought a war over taxes, so why would they create a government that taxed the states? One major downfall. The second significant folly was when the government would require troops to extinguish uprisings like Shays' Rebellion and enforce the laws. They didn't have a national army. Again, Congress would need to request a militia from the states. So with no source of revenue and no standing army, the effectiveness of the Articles broke down, and by 1786, they were failing. On the political spectrum, the Articles of Confederation were quite a failure as well. The Articles only laid out one branch of government to make the decisions. There was no series of checks and balances like there are today. There was no president in the executive branch, no federal court system in the judicial branch. under the Articles of Confederation, only Congress, under the legislative branch, existed. The Articles also laid out voting procedures for the states. Each state was given only one vote, and to pass any laws, 9 of the 13 states had to agree. In order to amend or change any of the previous laws, all 13 states were required to give their approval. So needless to say, there were some laws that definitely passed, but there was definitely no amendments under the Articles of Confederation. So these Articles of Confederation, as you could see, were weak. They gave the government certain powers to control things like the Postal Service, give value to money, request money from the states, request militia from the states. But you have to remember, it makes sense because we just came from a monarchy who was taxing us, or the British just came from a monarchy who were taxing them, not us. So they didn't want to impose all these taxes, all these mandated taxes on the states. They really tried to set this up kind of weak for a purpose. They didn't want to resemble a monarchy. So those were two major downfalls, and we're going to discuss one of the major good things about the Articles of Confederation and Northwest Ordinance of 1787 in more detail, and we'll see what the effects of not being able to tax or raise a militia against uprisings. We're going to discuss that later as well. We'll see you next time.